Hey everybody, I got a very simple thing we're doing today. We're making a homemade pizza dough. We're actually going to make a pizza, but the main gist of the video is a pizza dough made in a bread machine. And I've got a new bread machine here. My wife wanted one, we got one. You know how that goes. So anyway, I've been experimenting with a pizza dough, and of course on my personal Facebook page I've been posting progress. The first results weren't really that good. The second one was pretty good, and a friend of mine said, hey, post the recipe. And I said, well, I'm still working on the recipe. She goes, I don't care, that looks good, post the recipe. So anyway, I made some tweaks to the recipe. I think it's going to be pretty good, but it's still somewhat experimental. And so we're going to make some pizza dough. We're going to make probably about 2 pizzas today.
A vegan pizza for me?
Yes, we'll make you a vegan pizza, maybe a little small one off to the side because you're pretty small.
With lots of vegan cheese?
No, we're not using vegan cheese because vegan cheese sucks. Now, I realize some of the artisanal people make some, but that stuff you buy in the store, and we're not bringing that in the house. He's not bringing that stuff in this house. I've tried it. It tastes like coconut a lot of times. Cheese ain't supposed to taste like coconut. So anyway, let's get started. For making pizza, I always weigh my ingredients, and I make a little cheat sheet. I write everything out, and as you can see, I've been scribbling on this. I've been marking stuff off. I've been trying things. The bread machine requires a lot less sugar, a lot less yeast because it's a nice warm environment. It rises a lot quicker, and I'm not doing a slow ferment in the refrigerator, all that good stuff. So anyway, I've been adjusting this. I weigh everything so that I can get it consistent, but I will also put the measurements in volume. Like I'm using 500 grams of bread flour. I'll put how many cups of bread flour that equals. So anyway, let's get started. Now, in the bread machine, I have to put things in an order, and there will be some differences if you're going to hand knead this, and I'll try to write those up and put them into the blog post. So all the ingredients, all the instructions, everything is going to wind up in my blog post. And there will be a link down there somewhere below depending on what kind of device you use. I used to always say show more, but some devices don't say show more, and that wasn't very good. So anyway, my bread machine, which is a Cuisinart bread machine, it's a convection bread machine. They want you to put the water in first. So put the water in. Then I'm going to put in some sugar. I'm using raw sugar. That's just me. I like to use raw sugar. You can use whatever kind of sugar you got. It just needs something for the yeast to feed on and get going. Salt. I use sea salt or fine sea salt. Fine salt just blends in a lot easier. And because I'm working with yeast, I prefer not to use an iodized salt because iodine is a, what do they call that? Anyway, it kills bacteria and stuff like that, so yeast doesn't really like it. And because our water has a lot of chlorine in it, I don't use that. I just use filtered water. Olive oil. Put some olive oil in here. Olive oil gives a nice chew to the dough. You don't have to use olive oil if you don't really want to. Now I've got bread flour. I use the King Arthur bread flour. I happen to like their stuff. Now it's kind of a pain to put this in here like this because my bowl, but we'll get it in there. And hopefully we don't make too big of a mess. Look at there. Not too bad. Last ingredient, active dry yeast. So now we got to put everything into the bread machine. Flip our machine up. Put our basket in here. Latch it in place. I've got it set for a 2-pound dough, and I got the mix-ins turned off. Now menu, I've got to set the menu to a number 10. That's for doughs. I hit start, and an hour and 40 minutes from now, our pizza dough should be ready to roll out. Or not roll out because I don't use a roller on my pizza dough anymore. So now our machine, it's done the now it's steadily mixing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and look and check my dough ball. So this would be something you'll do if you have to make adjustments. I'm looking to make sure that it's not too dry, it's not too wet. This actually looks pretty good. but I do have a little bit of stuff in the corners. Now the manufacturer probably tell you don't stick anything in there while it's going. I just want to make sure I don't have anything stuck in the corners. But if that did look dry, then I would add a little more liquid. It looks pretty good. I think it's going to do just fine. Alright, so for my oven, I've got a rack that's about in the bottom third. I use that bottom third because that's where when I'm baking bread, that's the rack I need for my deal, and essentially I'm too lazy to move the thing. Now I'm putting a baking steel in here. You can also use a baking, like a pizza stone. So basically the same thing, but I happen to prefer the baking steel, just a personal preference. Now I'm going to put mushrooms on the pizza, but I like thicker mushrooms. I don't like those real thin, paper thin things that don't really cook anyway. So I always cook my mushrooms before I put them on the pizza, because because the oven's going to be so hot, they're not really going to have time to cook. So in this pan, I'm just taking some olive oil and I'm heating that up. Some oil's hot. We're going to put our mushrooms in there. Touch of salt, not much. I like to use tongs because then I can use that to flip them over. And all I'm really wanting to do is give them a sear. Sear them on both sides, and then they'll be good. I'm using high heat, cook them nice and quick. Now our mushrooms have been cooking a little bit. I'm going to flip them over, give them a sear on this other side. Now you will get some popping going on because mushrooms have a lot of moisture in them. And hot oil and water doesn't really like to go together. So our dough is done. So now it's time to make this into pizza crust. So let's see how this, look at that. That looks pretty good. So now I'm going to put some flour out here. I don't like putting a whole lot. There's my little paddle. Now this is a little sticky, so we're definitely going to need to add a little more flour, but we got some right there. We're not going to need a whole lot, but I got too much there. There. Now, we're going to divide this in half. Just going to eyeball it. Now, I make pizza on parchment paper. Now, take this. And shape this out. And then we'll put this on the parchment paper. No, wait. So now, I'm going to start pushing this out. We'll push it a little bit, and then we're going to let it rest for a minute. And we're just going to let this rest on our parchment paper. So my dough's rested for about 5 minutes. Right here. Seems to be a lot more pliable now. Before it was kind of tight. Look at there, that's a lot better. Now I don't want to push on the edge too much because I kind of want to keep a lip. But I'm trying to not tear the dough either. Of course, as you can see, I'm not an expert on pizza making. That's not too bad. So now let's make our actual pizza. I'm going to use some jarred sauce. Actually, I kind of like this one, but use whichever one you like. I'm using Roma's. I need to put some sauce down here. We're going to put like a 1/4 cup marinara sauce. Spread this out. If you want, you can use more sauce, but you know, the sauce kind of can get the dough soggy also. But now really use whichever sauce you like. Don't let me tell you which one that you got to use. There we go. Now that I got sauce on there, I'm going to put some oregano. Not a whole lot, just a little bit. Now I'm going to put my cheese down. I'm using store brand mozzarella. If I can find the real good mozzarella, I like to use that, but I wasn't able to find that this time. Okay, so now we've got some cheese now. Maybe a little more. There we go. I'll put some tomato slices on here. And I'm going to put some mushrooms. This one's ready. Oh, and I'm using a fancy pizza peel, my cookie sheet. Now this one here, we're going to go no cheese on this one. So what we're going to do, we're going to put a little extra sauce on this one. That way it's saucy. Pull that out. Make it nice and round. My pizzas are never perfectly round. My pizzas usually taste pretty good. Now I like to make these up ahead 5 minutes or so before I throw them in the oven. 5, 10, 15 minutes. That way everything kind of poofs back up a little bit. Or when I put it in the oven, it'll pop up, it'll poof up real quick. Kind of gives the yeast a chance to go back to work. Tomato, mushroom, There we go. These will be ready in about 5 minutes. I'm just about to put this one in the oven. And the last touch, I'm gonna take a little extra virgin olive oil. Maybe a little more than a little. Go around the crust. A little bit in here. A little bit of garlic powder. Be sure to hit that crust. A little bit there. Now it's ready to go in the oven. Yeah, and the oven is hot. Seven minutes later, we have this. Now comes the hard part. I have to let it cool down just a little bit before I cut into it. And that's what our vegan pizza looks like fresh out of the oven. Let's take a look. The bottom of that crust. That's awesome. Look at there. We got a few air pockets in there. But the real question is, how does it taste? Oh man. Okay, pizza's good. Sauce is good. I like the cheese. The dough is nice and airy and all that, but it definitely does not have the flavor from like a 3-day ferment in a refrigerator. But it's good pizza.